All right then. Welcome everybody. We're delighted to have you here at our weekly Tech Talk, which is mostly weekly, but the next one will actually be 2 weeks out. So we are being recorded, and this series is in collaboration with the Technical Association of Oregon. So we thank you for your support. So let's see, some logistics regarding your questions. Dr. Sarma welcomes your questions along the way, so feel free to speak up, or if you prefer, you can put them in the chat. I will be monitoring that, and so I can always chime in and interrupt her. So either way, whatever works. So at this point, I'm very happy to introduce our speaker this week, Anita Sarma. Dr. Sarma has been working on inclusive software for quite a number of years now, and she's going to be talking about her latest results here. She's also involved in 2 grants that involve designing inclusive software products, at least 2, maybe I've lost track. And of course, she's one of my favorite collaborators because this is a space that I'm active in too. So Anita, I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you, Margaret. And this is amazing that you are introducing me, because we are actually both co-leads of the inclusive MAG or GenderMag project. And Dr. Burnett was the one who started it, and I joined in 2015. I have been a big fan of this, and I'm so glad to be part of this now. So you have all been thinking about better software products, and today, let's talk about how you can design inclusive software products. So one of the first questions we might be thinking about, how does inclusion, right? Especially we are going to talk about inclusivity when looking at gender, and software actually relate, like what's happening? And the answer is that most software actually has gender bias bugs. And you're like, kidding, really? Where? And it's in the software you create and in the very tools you use to do it. And now we have this worried software developer and engineers like, oh my God, I have so much work already. You know, I'm overworked. Does this really matter? Okay, I believe there might be gender bias bugs, but does it really matter? And unfortunately, the answer is yes, it matters a lot. It's like a cognitive tax your user has to pay every time they hit one of the bugs. And even if, you know, this idea of equity or social justice is something you do not have the time or the resources to care about now, it still matters, because another reason to care is creating better software in general. It has been shown that addressing one underserved population can actually help others, aka the curb cuts that we all know very well. The origin of curb cuts came when someone noticed a war veteran having difficulty crossing the roads. You know, it's just hard to get off the pavement. And the idea of curb cuts came. And it does help people who are in wheelchairs. But hey, it helps also those people who are on their walkers, in strollers, and cyclists, also skateboarders. We don't want them to be so happy, but they do that. And, you know, the very few of us who use these rolling suitcases, right? So having curb cuts for those in wheelchairs actually helped a whole other like large population. So I'm hoping that by now you have agreed that yes, let's do something about inclusive software design. But first, let me say what you should not be doing. Shrink it and pink it is not a good strategy. It has been done, but it's not a good thing. For example, Dell's pink laptops came out in 2009. They slapped a pink shell on it. And the release of this amazing product came with this website where people could share recipes. And there was backlash on this. And guess how long it took for the system to come down, for them to take down the website? Any guesses? You can write in the chat. This one I'm monitoring. Anybody?
I'm guessing an hour. Oh, and here's one in the chat. A day.
Week, 3 hours. Margaret, Dr. Burnett here said an hour. It was actually 20 minutes, right? The backlash was so huge. And remember, this is before Twitter was a big thing and before cancel culture was a big thing, right? People were like horrified. Let me go back to the click here. Okay. Is it not moving? Okay. Another thing big for her, they put some sparkles and some soft little padding. And Ellen DeGeneres, who's a comedian, wrote in her blog, "Oh, my poor feeble hands. Before this, I could even not write a letter. How sad it is," right? And the sparkles and the soft thing, this was even more expensive than the regular big pen, right? So this is not a good strategy because one, it is completely disrespectful for the community they are trying to address. But more importantly, you really cannot divide the world into typical men versus women, right? Coming back to gender, it is a complicated phenomenon, right? It's really hard to just bucket people into, binary categories or even like multiple categories if you want. And the question is, why do we want to divide people? Why not spend our attention and efforts in debugging our software so it accommodates all? And that's the goal of GenderMag here. So where do these bugs lurk? A whole broad spectrum. And these are all things I have listed that have had academic research done and have shown that these bugs exist, from e-learning system, open source software, to also like the very help systems and bias reporting systems, right? So they are pervasive. So what can you do about it? We have GenderMag, which is an evaluation method, which I'm going to talk about it, how the method works. And then I'm going to talk about how we have observed software development teams using GenderMag in their development processes. So let's get into what is GenderMag. It is a method to find and fix gender inclusivity bugs. And behind GenderMag are these three personas. They're representative of a range of users, but from the perspective of 5 cognitive facets. These 5 cognitive facets, or sometimes we call them problem-solving styles, research has shown that there is statistical differences in how individual differences cluster by gender. And that's why we picked these 5, because they have been backed by at least 5 independent research studies showing that there are these differences in distribution. And I'll talk about this them in detail in the few coming slides. How GenderMag works, let me give a broad overview before we talk more about the persona and facets. First, you pick a persona. Let's say I pick Abby here. Then as a team, you pick the use case or scenario in your tool you want to evaluate. Say, hey, here is an augmented physical bookstore. This is a paper prototype from one of the HCI classes. And say the use case is finding science fiction books. And then you basically walk through the scenario via the intended sub-goals, actions, and basically your UI like this. So first, you find a sub-goal. What would the user be thinking at this point? And the question would be C, a bookstore map. And here's where I looked at the chat and got distracted. C, bookstore map, right? So let's assume the user is having this idea in their head. And then the evaluators, which is your software designers, will actually ask, will Abby, with her cognitive facets, have formed this sub-goal? Answer could be yes, very well, or no, and hey, why not even maybe? There's no need to get consensus here. And the important part is, why did the evaluators think not or maybe? And if they're talking about because of any of those 5 cognitive facets, say, for example, here, Abby's motivations, which is using a technology because it is part of her task to get something done. So that's the answer. And then irrespective of what the team decided, we stuff this sub-goal in Abby's head. And then what is the action that the designer thought Abby or the user should take? Say, tap browser off. And then you ask, would Abby know at this stage what to do? Yes, no, maybe. And here the maybe was because Abby does not like tinkering. So she won't poke and prod about. And if the action was taken, so let's take Abby's hand and do the action. You go to the next page or next screen and say, if the action was taken, will Abby see progress? Will she know that she is making progress towards her sub-goal? And the answer again, yes, no, maybe. And let's say here, Abby's self-efficacy could be a problem.
Anita, let me
Yes.
just interject. Robert Avery in the chat was wondering if this is kind of sort of like Scrum's user stories. Do you want to comment on that?
I don't understand Scrum's user stories, but it doesn't matter. So basically, some people might want to buy pink laptops, and that was fine. So I can see there are orange. I have a fascination for red, and there's a red shell and an orange shell. But I think what was not right was them having a recipe, a website that was associated with that pink laptop. And there was this idea of, oh, women would like to see this pink laptop and will have these recipes. So they were catering at a very superficial way to a community that they wanted the money from, instead of really deeply thinking about what kind of characteristic, what kind of things should this particular demographics that you're catering for, right? So it was, I see it as like, for example, the big pen. I don't know about the Dell, but the big pen is more expensive, right? There is the pink tax, and that's not really right. Does that answer your question, Robert?
Yes, he said.
All right. So you're right. So this is the broad overview. This is a cognitive walkthrough, and I've been talking about Abby a lot. Let's see what Abby looks like. Here is the Abby persona. The first thing to see is that it all fits in one page. We wanted to make sure that it was easy to see while you're doing the evaluation, and keep it all in mind. Anything above the gray line is completely customizable. You can use different pictures, whatever pictures you think are the right pictures for your user base. You can change the name. As you can see on the top here, the background skills, all customizable. Things on the bottom, these are the facets that belong to Abby, right? So these facets go on a spectrum of one end to another end. Abby sits on one end, Tim sits on another end, and these things in red are basically the facet values for Abby. And again, if Abby's facet value is not what you want to evaluate for, pick another persona, right? It's you are in charge. Let's talk about one particular facet, attitude towards risk. It says Abby rarely has spare time. So she is risk averse about using unfamiliar technology that might need her to spend extra time on. And as I had alluded before, each of these facets had empirical investigations behind it. This is once a study with 100 participants. And in this study, we had only 2 genders. So blue is representing the men in the study, yellow, the women. And they kind of talked about where they were with risk averseness. First thing, a lot of overlap. You cannot divide the world into the blues and the yellows. It's Tim's job to look out for all those individuals who are sitting in this spectrum, and Abby's to look out for these people. And Pat's look in the middle. Another thing to note is the distribution of the yellows, the women, and where they fall in the spectrum of risk averseness, and the men, right? And we love this animation. It's so amazing. We do it multiple times, right? So what is happening is, if you have software that is built by the Tims for the Tims of this world, you're leaving behind a large segment of population, right? And you're leaving behind about 58% of men, but 75% of women. And that's why, even though this is a cognitive bias problem, it is also a gender bias problem because of this distribution. And we have seen this time and again. This is a much more recent study, and this was done in Microsoft. These are Microsoft employees. Over here on the left side are the Abbies. Over here, right side are the Tims. Where is my cursor? Tims. And orange is women, men is green, and you can again see this clustering. A user study that we did with students, similar clustering. Another recent study by Dr. Burnett, actually, this is in class, and you can see this is an eCampus class, so this is post-bac students. And again, you see the women and men distribute versus Tim and Abby's. Another thing to think about is there is no individual who is all Abby or all Tim, right? You might have different parts of Abby and parts of Tim. I am in this spectrum. So Abby's spectrum is, say, information processing. Abby would like to look at all the information upfront before doing a task. I'm a selective or incremental. I get the least amount of information I need, I do something. Least amount of information I need, I do something. And it's just 2 different styles. It is what my brain works. often it works very well for me. I'm efficient, I get things done, but sometimes it bites me back, right? I had to set up this onerous conference management system. There was a large number of steps. I said, sure, let me do that. I did about 9 steps, 45 minutes in. The 10th step said, this is a really complicated thing. People often make mistakes. So we as conference managers can actually set it up for you. It's actually good if you let us do that, because there are this other 6 steps you should do otherwise. And I'm like, if only I had read it, right? And Margaret always says, hey, Tim, you don't read emails. So that's me. I am a Tim when it's information processing. It works for me, but sometimes it doesn't, right? So they're just different styles. But also it can be situational. Where risk averseness is there, I am very risk averse. Suppose I am trying to understand this other government website for submitting proposals. I'm very risk averse. I have a process, I have a way to do. I'm not trying new features out. Something that doesn't matter as much, I might, right? So it depends on the situation and individuals. This is data from real software products about how pervasive these biases are. This is data from just 17 teams where they evaluated their software, their features, and this is the percentage of features where they found bugs, inclusivity bugs. And inclusivity bugs are those bugs where any of these facets we talked about gets implicated. Average, 32%. Worst case, 100%. That's pretty crappy, right? But it's not bad because this was a paper prototype. So you can start early and start doing inclusive design practices way early in the paper prototype stage. You don't have to wait till your design is all done. Now there is a problem. So questions we would get is like, what does happen? Is it really improving when I remove this inclusivity bugs? And yes, it does. And this is what we call our amazing graph. This is the example from Microsoft. This was an academic scholar, Google Scholar kind of software they were using. It had been in the market for a while. And they wanted to test for, how well it is doing. They did a user study, and they have women and men in the study. And the first thing, this is how many tasks that the women failed at. And you can see they were doing at least almost double. They ran GenderMag evaluation, did the fix, and did another user study. And what do we see? The first thing, men and women do better, right? That the graph is lower. So hey, curb cuts idea works. And the other, that's what we call the amazing graph, is the gender gap disappeared, right? So it does help. So hopefully, 15 minutes of talking has convinced you that it helps. Their bugs exist, it helps to remove them. And now you're thinking, I want it, what can I do about it? And what we want to help you with is, we have been on this thing for many years, like, maybe 7-8 years helping teams do GenderMag evaluations. And then we decided, okay, what are these practices? What are these teams doing? And this is an action research method. We collaborated with 10 teams. 5 were from OSU's academic IT team. So they develop software for the academic IT, and 5 from industry. And you can see the time span in how many years or months they had been using GenderMag, and across a variety of domains. We collected data about their sessions, interviews. One of our students was actually also embedded in some of the design meetings, and any follow-up we got. From there, we got 9 practices and 2 pitfalls that we have categorized into these 3 broad classes. I won't have time to go through all, but we have papers and an IEEE column, which will be giving you more information if you would like so.
Hey,
so
Anita.
First, let's talk about minimizing costs. There were 3
Anita,
yes.
I have a question that relates to the Abby persona.
Yes.
You want to take it now? This is from Michael. He wants to know if the top part of the persona is completely customizable, then are the personas independent of age and job type? Or are we really saying that for every age and job type, there is some subpopulation that matches Abby?
So the short answer is, I can say yes and no, right? That's the best answer. Yes, you can put any age you want, any background you want, but note that the bottom part, the facets are the facets that research has shown that differences cluster by gender, right? There might be other facets that matter for age, for example, memory, vision, which we have not accommodated for. GenderMag is an evaluation method, and we have a parent method called inclusive mag. And I think Dr. Burnett teaches this as every year actually in her class, which is inclusive design. And we have, she has had students that have done age mag, that have done cognition map, basically if you're on ADHD spectrum. So you can put any age here, but this facets are not geared towards looking at specific facets, specific cognitive styles or cognition issues that might arise for, older generation people or younger generations motor skills.
So we might need to use a combination of these magnifiers to look at like an older Abby or a younger Abby or with certain cognitive impairments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Definitely, yes. So there was a recent paper in one of our conferences that is actually created AgeMag and have done an empirical study. Dr. Burnett is actually looking at SES mag, lower socioeconomic situations, where there might be certain things about, risks about using public software or public kiosks and things. So, right. So GenderMag, and that's why we have the word gender, is based on these 5 facets that we know from research that individual differences are clustering by the genders. For other cognition issues or characteristics, I should say, not issues, you might want to have a different mag.
So we pick the age and the employment kind of to match the project that we're working on, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you are doing, I did a whole bunch of studies with open source, and we were looking at our user base to be students who are, graduating from undergrad and they want a job and they want to work in OSS to get their careers or skills higher, skills shown in GitHub. So we put that kind of the demographics. Okay. If you're working for, I know one of our collaborators is doing it for health services in UK. So then you can put, whoever your user base would be. And again, you can change the pictures too to match, the kind of people. Like this is a white Caucasian lady. If you're looking at in a developing country, you can put a different picture, right? So you match the upper part to be whatever user base your product looks at. The other thing I did not mention when we were talking about is these gaps. This is for the pronouns. You can even change the pronouns that you want for your Abby to be.
Oh, yeah, okay. So you can really tune this to match the needs. Yeah, that's very nice.
Cool. Thank you. All right, so let me remember where I was. I think we were doing minimizing costs. There are 3 practices and 2 pitfalls. And one of them I'll talk about is abstracting beyond. And these practices were basically the teams that they were doing themselves, right? So we were observing them and kind of seeing how they were using GenderMag in their development. We particularly like abstracting beyond because it's like design patterns, right? So GenderMag, like testing, is a very concrete way. You have very concrete inputs, your use case, your actions, sub goals, and you have very concrete inclusivity bugs that you find for that particular action. What this team did was, what's interesting was they were able to take the results from one session and kind of abstract to entire UI patterns, enabling them to reuse their findings and the fixes. This is a quotation from Team C. When they realized, wait, this problem we have found is not just for one dashboard, even though we tackled only this one, it's a good starting point for all our dashboards. That's great. One thing to be cognizant of, and this is a pitfall, is you should be careful about how you're abstracting, right? It cannot be done ad hoc. So one of the problems that this team ran into was they were so interested in taking the finding and abstracting out. In some cases, they started using their prototype they were looking at as a proxy for a future tool, and that can be a problem. So choose wisely where you can abstract, what kind of design patterns you'll be able to abstract out. The next category is maximizing benefit. We have 3 practices. I'm going to talk about calculating bias. It is a very, very, very simple thing, right? It is the debriefing at the end of the session. So we leave about 20 minutes at the end of a GenderMag session for the team to debrief and just discuss. And the basic idea is just calculate the biases that you have, right? How many of the use case had no problems, so no bugs? How many were just usability problems? Maybe the label is too small to see. But how many were inclusivity bugs, right? Where a facet was implicated. And in this team, it's 51%. What this helped is for Team C again, it helped them see the big picture, right? Wow, Abby violates a lot of our assumptions around tech, right? They were very much into tinkering style of learning. Another thing that did was it helped generate thoughtful discussions among the team itself, right? They started talking about what their, it says personality here, but it really is cognitive styles, what their problem solving styles were about. It also helped jumpstart fixes around facets, right? So as I said, one of the problems that this team had was there was a lot of poking and prodding involved. So they can start looking at, okay, let's try to fix this one facet. Let's try to have, so tinkering is on one end of the spectrum where the Tims of the world learn by just, trying out new features, just finding something. And the Abbeys of the world like more process-oriented learning. So how can this Team W here, start talking about how can we allow the process-oriented learners to learn about the features we have in our system?
Just a quick question that when teams are using this and they're looking at these kind of gender bias bugs, how in practice do they look at the effect size of like a particular bug? If it's like a small effect or something that makes a big giant difference for the user, how do they surface those things, the different effect sizes?
So right now with the evaluation, the evaluation is based on cognitive walkthrough, right? Where the goal is to be inclusive or harvest all the problems that might occur. Just like you do heuristic evaluation or a cognitive walkthrough without the Abby or whatever persona you use, you can as a team decide if the problem is in the landing page, it is likely to cause a lot of, a big wide impact, right? Okay. So GenderMag evaluations alone will not be able to tell you the effect size or, whether someone would completely fail to use the system and go away, or someone would just take 5 extra minutes or 10 extra minutes. It will be depending very much on, say, the designer. If you look at the user study that Microsoft did, there was double the failure of women, right? So that showed there was a high effect size. So you cannot, from the evaluation alone, find out effect size. As a team, you can run a user study and see what's the difference pre and post for effect size.
Okay, no, that's great. Yeah.
Or you can just be, more analytical and think about the impact and the coverage that a bug will have where it is found.
Right. Okay, no, that's really great. Yeah, appreciate that.
Cool. All right, back to where I was. Yes. I think going to next is beyond the session, right? So we talked about how GenderMag helps you find the bugs, fix the bugs during the sessions. But what we also saw was that GenderMag was having an effect beyond just those evaluations, right? So beyond just the products that they're evaluating. My personal favorite is the facet survey, and I'll talk about that. This is one of the teams developed it. It's not something we came up with. So that's super cool. And what they did was they really liked this facet idea. And they were like, hey, why should it be only for, the products? What they decided was they created a questionnaire, and a individual taking the questionnaire can find out, which of their facets are Abby, which of their facets are Tim. And what they started doing was using this surveys to recruit participants for user studies. Most companies do, I think they try to do, balance the demographics in men and women. What they started doing is, can we recruit for Abby's and Tim's too, right? So it might be all the women that this company recruited could be just all Abbeys, irrespective of the genders. So they started also paying attention to the Abby-Tim distribution in their user studies. Another company said they would like to do that in their focus groups, right? So trying to think even earlier on is focus groups or what your individuals want, or in user studies to kind of see, like the Microsoft orange and the blue graph we talked about. It also helped analyze the user study data as well as measure the effectiveness of fixes facet by facet. Because it might be, as I said, in this one OSUIT team, tinkering was kind of the facet that was the main culprit. And they can say like, okay, if I have so many things to do, again, like in heuristic evaluation, or even when you're trying to do inspection methods and trying to fix bugs, what shall I first look at? There are so many bugs if there is. You can prioritize finding out the facet that is, got the highest impact, or the facet that's the least supported. And you can even check if your fixes are helping it per facet. I have no collection of what time it is, so I'll move on. This is my last slide. So, with interruptions, I'm at 11:32. My talk was less than half an hour. All right, so conclusion. What we are really trying to do, GenderMag improves inclusivity, right? What we want to do is, like, as software designers, software engineers, why don't we debug our software, the things that we create, so that it accommodates different cognitive styles, right? Let's just be helping everyone. We were able to show you 10 teams experiences that have shown 9 practices that help with adoption, and 2 pitfalls to guard against. So hopefully something to think about. Another thing that is like, the evaluation is a cognitive walkthrough, but you can use bits of it, just the facets, just the persona when you're designing your software, or just do quick design evaluations in your head by channeling Abby if you have done enough practice. And the goal is integrating a systematic process can make all the difference. Here is our team C again. That was the most verbose. I thought it was very, very informative. There were some things that we knew we had to change, and this gave us a process of how to do. And, takeaway, it's about inclusivity. Let's handle both the Abbies. I believe this is the Tims over here, and these are the Abbies. Let's support both ends of the spectrum. Here is follow-up resources. GenderMag Kit is free. It is downloadable. We are not making money. It's our soapbox just to make the world a better place, just be more inclusive and help everyone. So you can download the kit. We have an open source tool which helps you with the evaluation recording. We are even coming up with another tool, which we just got into an academic publication, that is able to look at a web page and identify some of the inclusivity bugs that might lurk there. So with that, I end, and thank you to Dr. Burnett and the scores of our students who have made this work possible. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. That's a big applause from me. So we are open for questions for Dr. Sarma. Would anybody like to just jump in? I can kind of kick the ball off. Anita, you just pointed to, I think you alluded to the design catalog. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about that, or maybe show it on your screen if it's easy?
Okay. So one of the things, the first, like, a little background, right? So one of the questions we often would get when we would say, look, GenderMag matters, and we would show that blue boxes to say, like, it's pervasive. People are asking, oh, does it really matter? Would it make my tool better? So now we have the amazing graph, like, yes, it works. And then a lot of the teams say, like, oh, I like it, but do you have solutions? What can we do about it? So towards that, we have started a design catalog where we are collecting the different designs that teams have found to be useful. So it's all data generated. This is our GenderMag project. Every year you can download the kit, you can get the personas customizable, and we have our design catalog here. And over here, we have started collection of before, after, which cognitive facet, is a problem for this particular interface, and what did a particular team do about fixing it. And we have seen the problems, apart from the systems, also in documentation. The whole information architecture in how information is presented could affect comprehensive information processors. Many of the websites documentation is geared towards tinkerers and selective information processors. We have also done it on conference websites. We have done 4 or 5 conference websites. And someplace, I think we have those distributions. I thought we had a tab that, oh yeah, you can do open source, I think. Things have changed, but yes, you have tabs over here. So, conference websites, you can look at we have created a conference inclusivity checklist that when you're setting up your conference, you can look at. You can look at particular design changes by facets or, design changes in surveys, websites. This all gives you everything here.
Hi, Anita. Let's see here. A question came in from the chat about any particular organizations that you've worked with or that you know about that have been using GenderMag.
So we know Microsoft is using, so that is someone we are able to say. We are working with OSU IT, so they are our partners. So we have been working, like, as I said, 5 of the teams we talked about, and some of them have worked with GenderMag for 2 years. And now we actually are being supported by our CTO to get systematization of GenderMag into the OSU IT. I think they call themselves the UIT teams. So all the different IT teams in OSU to systematize it. So those are the 2 big names we can give you.
Ooh, we can throw in Google. I know they're using it.
They're using it. Okay, there's Google. So they are doing the heuristics. We have faculty members, Lara Leto, who's using it in our class. We have quite a few other faculty. Cornell, they are using it also in their classes. Yeah.
Right. They're teaching the GenderMag Teach site. You can probably navigate there from here. Lists a bunch of people, a bunch of universities all over the world that are actually teaching it. I know Cornell is one of them, and Carnegie Mellon, I believe, is on that list. Harvard is on the list. We're on the list.
Yeah, you're on the list. Here, Teach site. So you can get more information about here. The other thing that Dr. Burnett really takes great pleasure is coloring this maps over here. Because we have GenderMag Kit downloads, right? You have to fill out a form about, who you are, why are you downloading. And every time a new state comes in, she colors it and sends us an email. And you can see, we are getting quite a few coverage internationally also. But remember, it takes just one download to get a whole country colored.
You're not supposed to tell them that.
Okay.
But right, but it's not just visits to the website. It's genuine engagement of some sort. It includes not only downloading the full kit, but another way is participating in our open source project, because there's a tool. And so people who contribute to the tool also are obviously engaged with the project. So we have a couple of sources of data about genuine engagement, or if somebody tells us they're teaching it, like, for example, that's how Mexico got on there, is there's at least one university down there now that started teaching it. So yeah.
Yeah. Other thing is Wikimedia Education was another team that had made fixes based on GenderMagging.
See, another question.
Margaret, you froze. Is it me or is it you?
She's stuck. I'll interject a quick question. Are there any other places we can look for the Inclusive Mag and Age Mag, or just through the published papers?
We have papers published. So Inclusive Mag, we have a paper. We also have a paper. If you're interested, email us about a specific mag. That would be the best way.
Okay.
We have a paper somewhere here, GenderMag Publications. So we have a paper on Inclusive Mag. Dr. Burnett is working on a paper on SES Mag. But if you write to us about which mag you're looking at, we will be happy to help.
Okay.
Yeah, because it takes so much effort to just, do this mag. So we have focused only on GenderMag, like Dr. Burnett and I on GenderMag, and now SES Mag. So we can point you to other places that we know about that might be using other mags.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I've watched this grow up, and I am really impressed with what you guys have done and how mature and polished this has become over time. And it's just, one person's opinion, but I think this is, out of all the things I've seen in terms of positively impacting software quality that have come out of OSU, I think this is has the highest potential impact. And
Mhm.
certainly the project I point people towards is like how you can make a difference.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah,
That's
this is really
our
nice. Yeah,
soapbox.
I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of this. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me monitor the chat itself. What was the most surprising discovery so far? I think what I find surprising was it I don't think it's surprising per se, but it's just nice to know why I was having like this cognitive styles give us vocabulary. And now, like, Margaret would just say, oh, Anita, this is because you're a Tim, all right? Or I'll know, oh, because this is an Abby. That it just helps conversations and being able to understand why I am suffering with some tools and, why somebody else is doing. So you can get more empathy by understanding not only yourself, but other people who are your software users or just in your team. One thing that initially surprised me, I'm getting used to it now, was that even documentation can be affected. Because initially when we started GenderMag, it's building on a cognitive walkthrough, which has been mainly done for user interfaces. So when open source people were saying, oh, we don't, open source projects, there's a lot of data, and CNCF was interested, and which is a big foundation, and Apache was also interested. And we started talking about, okay, how can we help open source projects, especially in attract and retaining more women. And as we have seen the clustering, more Abby is really what we need. We started looking at the documentation and was like, oh my, even documentation can be a problem, right? So that was very surprising that the information architecture itself could be gender biased. Okay.
Sorry, I lost my Wi-Fi for a while. I hope that the questions, somebody watched the chat.
Yes, Tina had a question that I answered.
In case I haven't missed anything, or in case I have, well, either way, can you tell us a little bit more about those teams that you were talking about? Like, how many were there, and where were they all from, and like, what was kind of the deal with that study?
Okay, let me go to the site. So here is our teams, and 5 of them were OSU IT. One of them, which is our champion, is the Canvas team, and they made changes that really helped. One of the teams was a bias reporting team, and that was kind of surprising. And it was a conversation that Margaret, you have had. And when we were talking to the person, she was talking to the person, was like, oh my God, what if our bias reporting system itself is biased? Then what does that mean, right? So we had Wikimedia education. I do not remember the other teams. Do you recall which were the other industry teams?
Let's see.
I have to open the paper.
Yeah, I don't recall whether we are allowed to say who some of these other ones were, but there were, let's see, in that study, there were 1 or 2 very large technology companies. Let's see, it's kind of between this study and another one, I'm getting a little bit mixed up about who was in which study, but one of them also had a very small tech organization. At least one of these had state government agencies. So those are the ones that pop into my mind right now. Okay. If we are at the end of the questions, then perhaps we should say thank you again to the speaker. And yeah.
I have a question actually.
Go ahead.
It was about you had a slide in there that showed like like a bar chart, and I think there was like a big disparity for like women initially.
This one?
Yeah, and then you went through you went post GenderMag, and then you achieved kind of like a more equal distribution. I don't know if you went over it. I may have missed it, but to achieve that, was there you deliberately tried to remove, I guess, kind of offending, material, or are you actively saying we're starting from scratch, we're building something that we think is inclusive? Is it like removing, is the technique removing things, or is it just starting from scratch to make something that's more equal?
Sure. First of all, I would say it was not us. This was the team at Microsoft, and we are able to use their name, so we are very thankful to them.
Yeah.
So it was the team that had developed the software, right? And they did the study, and then they did GenderMag evaluations, and they fixed those parts that were the problem parts. And one of the problems was, for example, if comprehensive information processing style was a problem. Like they were giving a lot of information that was not about the task itself. They expected people to get some information and start doing something. So they changed that screen, for example, right? So they made the fixes after doing GenderMag evaluations, and then they redid the study. And this is the post-GenderMag graph I'm showing you.
Okay.
That kind of made me think of one more question. So it's been a while now that GenderMag has been kind of out in the wild. And I was wondering that, what do you think is the overall impact or the sort of future looking impact on software design, that we could have a user in many different subpopulations, and is the future kind of more software that the user can say, I am this type of person, please adapt yourself to me? Or do we try to just maybe fix the bugs as we find them? Do you have any thoughts on kind of what the future of design looks like?
I have my thoughts, right? This is what I'm thinking. So we tried going down the route of, adapting to a particular type of user. But the problem with that is these facets are also situational. So one of the things, I could take my facet survey and I said, okay, I am 2 parts Abby, 3 parts the Tim. Hey, system, change things up, right? But depending on the situation, it might change. And then this becomes a combinatorial problem. So I think what we really need to do is look out for the Abbies as well as the Tims. If you have the time, you need to look at the evaluation from both the Abby perspective as well as the Tim perspective. Because when we do GenderMag evaluations in our classrooms in SCI class, sometimes they go way over to the Abby side, but the Tims will start failing. Right? So it's important to look out for the Abbies as well as the Tims. And I feel from what I've heard from the teams that doing this GenderMag evaluation is time consuming. It is quite a bit of time, but channeling an Abby or channeling a Tim becomes like a muscle memory. So as people are designing, they would themselves say, oh, would Abby do that? No, this is very much tinkering. Let me put some help information or something, or put the feature somewhere where it is going to be easily seen or as part of the task, right? So what I feel is, as more and more people get into the GenderMag world, it is the channeling of the facets in their heads, channeling Abby, channeling Tim, that can create much better design from the start. So it will change like the thought process.
So it really gets into kind of how the designers are working and what they're aware of. Okay. No, that would be a really nice outcome if we can scale that up. Yeah.
There's actually a little piece of scaling that I can add to that too. So when you design, let's see if you can, I'm not sure. Can you see my hands right now?
Yes.
Very
good.
When you design for the Abby end of these facet spectra of values, and you at the same time are designing for the Tim end, what you've done by designing for these 2 different people is you've also designed for everybody in the middle, because you're not designing one for Tim and one for Abby. You're designing something that works for both of them. And so that's what helps take care of the combinatorial problem, is that these 2 people are endpoints on a spectrum, opposite endpoints.
So in your experience has shown, if we satisfy the needs of those kind of the endpoints, generally we're also helping everybody else in between. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we had talked about that once, but this is kind of I think it provides more clarity in terms of like what the designers should do in order to include as many people as they can really in the design. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.